What's up, everybody, and welcome to Module 5 of the White Code Compass. I think this is my favorite module of all because this is the module about gaining meaningful experiences, and really gaining meaningful experiences about kind of becoming the person that you want to be in your college experience, developing the skills, developing the beliefs, developing the ideals that are going to fuel you in life and in your journey through medicine and beyond. And today we are going to talk about some great things related to the different types of experiences that you can have and what I think you should be doing with your time in college that will help support your medical school application and support your story. So we're going to talk about a number of things. We're going to talk about the different types of ECs, so-called extracurricular activities. We're going to talk about shadowing. We're going to talk about clinical experience and how it's actually different from shadowing. We're going to talk about volunteering. We're going to talk about leadership and employment. And we're going to talk about research opportunities. And we are going to talk about how to be intentional with your experiences and promote your individual skills and traits. So let's kind of dive in. Let's define shadowing first. So what is shadowing? Well, it is passive observation of a physician's work. So this is where you're actually just kind of puppy dogging a doctor and seeing what they do. You're not necessarily involved in taking care of the patient. In fact, you're probably not. You're just watching the doctor, kind of watching them do their jobs. The whole purpose of this is that it helps you understand kind of the daily life of a doctor. What are they actually doing with their time? What does their workflow look like, right? And the benefit of shadowing is that you can do it in just about any specialty that you want, and so it can expose you to different medical specialties that may be of interest to you. I love it. I was able to get a variety of different types of shadowing in the hospital that I spent most of my time at when I was in college. And it was great. I got to understand the daily workflow of the doctors that I was with and got to see kind of what my life would be like if I chose their field. Shadowing is a really good starting point if you don't have any prior clinical experience, if you've never spent time in a hospital, because this is just going to kind of show you just about everything you need to know about what life is actually like working in the hospital and taking care of patients. And again, I encourage people, explore a range of fields if you can. Do shadowing in primary care, do shadowing in surgery, pediatrics, anesthesiology. Get a vibe for the different fields and kind of help yourself clue in on some of the things that you might be interested in. The key when you're shadowing is to pay attention to the physician-patient interactions, the team dynamics, and the problem solving that goes on in each of these fields of medicine. That's going to clue you into what the work actually looks like as a doctor. Now, how do you actually get shadowing? Here's the big question, right? Here's what I did, and here's what I think works well. I should have put this at the top because this is actually the easiest thing. Just ask people you know. If you know a doctor, if you know someone that knows a doctor, just ask them. Maybe you go to church with a doctor. Maybe you have a family member who's a doctor. Maybe you have a family member who knows someone who's a doctor. Start there. But what I recommended to people who don't know physicians and don't have physicians in their circle is really just find your local hospital, go to their website, and find the doctors that are on staff. You might search physician directory or find a physician or something like that. And you can email these guys individually. Sometimes it's difficult to get a hold of their emails. It sometimes helps to just kind of Google, Dr. such and such email, and you may find something. You can also just call their offices directly and speak to someone at the front desk and say that you want to shadow. Something I encourage people to keep in mind, though, is that you should always expect a very, very low response rate when you're sending out cold calls and cold emails. In my experience, you may get one hit for every 10 to 15 calls or emails that you make. That's just the name of the game. Doctors are very, 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 very busy, and many of them don't want a student shadowing them because they feel that students can get in the way. And that's true, we can, right? But there are some doctors that love to teach. There are some doctors that love to share their experiences, and you'll hear back from those. I encourage you to personalize each email that you send to kind of show a genuine interest in the specialty of that particular doctor. And I really encourage you to avoid sending generic mass emails. Make sure to include the doctor's name in each message. Hey, Dr. such and such. I really want to shadow you in the field of whatever. I know that you work at such and such hospital, and I want to see what your day looks like. Can I shadow you? That kind of thing. Be specific. If you want to add a kind of sweet little touch on it, you can even kind of read a little bit about their background. Where did they go to medical school? Where did they do residency? Do you have any kind of ties to that physician in some way or fashion? For example, a physician that I wanted to shadow at one point. I found out that they actually went to college where I went to college. And I was like, hey, you went to this college, so did I. I would like to shadow you. And, that never hurts to kind of have that little in, if that makes sense. But again, all it takes is one opportunity to get some great shadowing. And once you have shadowed one doctor, it becomes much, much, much easier to shadow others because every doctor knows more doctors and they can get you in touch with people in their field and in other fields. So keep pushing until you get a hit, until you get a response, and then follow through with it. Now, I want to differentiate shadowing from clinical experience. Clinical experience tends to actually be a little bit of higher importance in medical school applications. I don't necessarily mean higher importance than shadowing. I just mean higher than almost everything, to be honest. What it involves is a active participation in patient care. You are actually involved in the process of caring for the patient. This doesn't mean you're necessarily providing true medical care. You don't have to be a nurse. You don't have to be a doctor to do clinical experience, but you'll see that there are many, many ways to get clinical experience. And ultimately, the whole point of this is it kind of just shows your commitment to medicine and to patient care, right? Hospitals have sick people in them, and getting clinical experience kind of shows that you're okay with being around sick people and that you can handle the realities of patient care. So what are some different ways you can get clinical experience? Well, you can get hands-on exposure in various settings. You can get hands-on exposure as a scribe. You can get hands-on exposure as a medical assistant, an EMT, a CNA, working in a hospice setting, and the list goes on. As you can see, most of these are like jobs, right? Paid jobs. And I think that's actually awesome to get a paid job as a scribe, as a medical assistant, whatever. You're not going to be really shadowing the doctor too much when you're working these jobs. You're going to be caring for the patient. And it's awesome to be able to get clinical experience in which you get paid to care for the patient because you can kind of kill two birds with one stone. You get the clinical experience, you make the money. It's awesome. The key with clinical experience, it has to involve that direct patient care. You're building communication skills with the patients. You're building empathy. You're building bedside manner. You are working with the patients. If you are not working with patients, it is not clinical experience. Shadowing does not count as clinical experience. Why? It's different. Shadowing is a passive role. It's observation. Clinical experience is an active role. You are actually caring for the patient. And again, it shows admissions committees you can handle the realities of patient care, which are sometimes difficult. Let's talk about how to get clinical experience. I kind of mentioned that there's a lot of different jobs that you can get to acquire clinical experience, but there's also unpaid volunteer ways to do it as well. And you heard the word volunteer in there. This can also be a great way to get volunteer experience, which is also something we'll touch on in a minute. One of the things that I did when I was trying to find clinical experience back in the day was working with the Cancer Society and actually driving patients to and from their appointments. That really does qualify as patient care. You're with them, you're helping them get to the place they need to go in order to get their care. You're hearing their stories, you're talking to them, you're involved in that process, right? Or even if you want to work at a cancer society or something like that, you might have an opportunity to talk to patients, convey information to them about their care, things like that. That qualifies as patient experience, clinical experience. The main thing is that you are with the patients directly. But again, if you want to get paid for clinical experience, you can be an MA. MAs are going to learn how to take vitals, prepare patients for their exams, and kind of help out the doctors. A nursing assistant is going to be more something you'll see in the hospital. You're helping the patients with their hygiene and their feeding and their mobility. EMTs are going to provide emergency medical care in ambulances or hospitals. That's obviously a little bit more of a complicated job to get because it requires some training, but it's a possibility, especially if you already have a background in that. Phlebotomists are people who draw blood from patients in a hospital or laboratory setting. Hospice volunteers, again, these are not necessarily paid. That should have gone up there. But hospice volunteers provide kind of emotional support and information to terminally ill patients. Medical scribes are people who document the physician-patient interactions in real time. They actually write out what the physician is doing with the patient and what the physician is talking to the patient about, and you can get paid to do that. These are all different ways to get clinical experience. And again, just keep in mind, clinical experience is you are working directly with the patient. Now, volunteering is kind of the offshoot of these things that we've been talking about. There are so many ways to get volunteer experience, and a big misconception that I think pre-medical students often have is that the volunteer work that they do has to be in a clinical setting, and I fundamentally disagree with that. In fact, I would almost go so far as to say that I recommend it not be in a healthcare setting. And the reason I say this is because volunteering is one of the few opportunities you have in a medical school application process in your pre-medical journey to show what you care about. Examples of non-clinical healthcare, or rather non-healthcare volunteering, is things like soup kitchens, tutoring, community outreach, whatever interests you. This is all about you. This is about what you care about. This is about what makes you who you are. And volunteering really is one of the only ways that you can demonstrate that with how you spend your time. And so I encourage you, don't necessarily, quote, waste this time in a clinical setting. There's shadowing for that. There's clinical experience for that. Unless you just love the clinical setting for some reason, volunteering is the time for you to donate your time on a project that you really care about. Ultimately, volunteering shows a commitment to service and helping underserved populations, whatever it may be. It creates awareness of the realities of the human condition, and it kind of helps develop your compassion, resilience, and your teamwork skills. Now, I'll even go so far as to say that volunteering doesn't even have to be things related to underserved populations. You can volunteer by creating a program at your school. You can volunteer by doing something like this course that you are consuming right now, creating a product that people can consume to get information that they may need for a specific purpose. It literally doesn't matter. Whatever it is, I encourage you to double down on the thing that you care about. A great example of a volunteer experience that is technically non-clinical, but very, very valued, is if you know how to play an instrument, take that instrument to the nursing home, to the assisted living facility, and go play the instrument, whatever it may be, for those residents. My gosh, they love it. I used to do it myself. I played the piano, and this was a big part of my ministry when I was in college. Every other Friday, I would try to make it to a local assisted living facility, especially around Christmas time. I would go even more frequently, and I would play the piano for the residents of these assisted living centers. My gosh, they loved it. It was such a blessing to me. It really just encouraged me and invigorated me in a lot of ways, and I think it was an invaluable experience that just really kept me grounded. And so I encourage you to find those things that are unique to you. What are the skills that you have? How do you put those to work in service of other people and on behalf of other people? If you just don't have any ideas, how can you get volunteering? Okay, well, you can look for opportunities at local hospitals, clinics, nursing homes, or public health departments if you want to do something clinical. If you want to explore the non-healthcare things, go to the food banks, the shelters, do the tutoring, things like Big Brothers, Big Sisters, Habitat for Humanity. Go to your church. Oh my gosh, they have something for you to do, I promise. Also, like I said, consider creating your own project, like going out to the nursing homes and playing an instrument. Here's the thing. If you're going to take anything away, it doesn't really matter what you do. Do something unique to you, but also focus on consistency more than prestige. This is not about the name of the organization that you volunteer with. Nobody cares about that. This is all about what you care about. Aim for that long-term commitment, even just a few hours every other week. Don't worry about this, worry about this. Focus on one, maybe two, but preferably one major projects. Don't dip your toes in everything. Don't try to be doing this and that and the third. Don't try to have a list of volunteer experiences. Focus on one major thing. Go as deep as you can into that one project. Focus on quality over quantity. It is not a coveted thing in a medical school application to be a so-called jack of all trades and have your hands in every little thing. That is not what you want to convey. You want to convey consistency and commitment by sticking to one project over time if you can. Now let's talk about research. Oh my gosh, what can I not say about research? I mean, research is arguably one of the best extracurricular activities. The reason I say this is because it's not actually just an extracurricular activity. It's kind of a curricular activity in some ways. It's an academic pursuit. And so it really kind of bridges the gap between extracurricular and curricular activity. The reason I think that it's one of the best extracurricular activities is because it often results in really good networking opportunities, and not the least of which, letters of recommendation. Research puts you in a unique position where a faculty member is going to get to know you in a way that they wouldn't if you just took their course. If you take a course and you perform well, then yeah, a person can say, well, Billy Bob showed up on time, Billy Bob turned in his work on time, Billy Bob got great grades, and Billy Bob seemed like a nice guy. But when you do research with someone, they can say, well, Billy Bob has great critical analysis skills. He's a great team player. He shows up on time. He's intelligent. He takes work on even without being asked. He learns quickly. There's all kind of new things that a person can assess about you when you do research with them. And I think that's one of the reasons it's one of the best ECs, because it's just all these things kind of wrapped up into one. My objective whenever somebody takes on research is that you really want to adopt a sense of ownership over whatever project you join. I think it's very important that the research not just be something you participated in, but something you really took hold of and kind of made it your baby whenever possible. I recommend when you're trying to get research, really start with the faculty members that you already know, especially those for the lab courses that you take, right? The bio, the chem, the psych, the public health, whatever classes you are in, and just email them and express interest in getting research. Other than that, you can also use these structured programs. There's these summer research institutions, summer research internships at the NIH, the STRP, SURF, REUs, that stands for Research Experience for Undergraduates. I did 2 REUs. I think they're awesome. You can find information about REUs by just Googling lists of REUs at various institutions. REUs are awesome because they're typically summer research programs for which you get paid. They will give you housing. They will pay you several $1,000s for the summer. In a lot of cases, you might even get like a meal plan associated with that university that you're working at. You get great experience. You get maybe a poster presentation. You maybe get like a seminar that you can share your research at. It is amazing. And of course, you get to network. Other than that, ask your mentors, your TAs, your academic advisors for connections if you want to do research locally at your institution or close by. Man, the main thing here, show curiosity and willingness to learn. You don't need prior lab experience, although it certainly doesn't hurt. But many, many things that you're going to learn when you're doing research can just be taught. You don't need a background in research. You got to start somewhere. So show that curiosity and willingness to learn and willingness to work. Ultimately, the research you're going to do is going to be beneficial to the PI, the so-called person who runs the lab. It's going to be beneficial to them because you can kind of do the labor, the work, the things that need to happen, the little projects, the little tasks that have to get done. And if you show curiosity and willingness to learn, it really elevates a faculty member's perception of you because their objective is to get things done. Your objective is to learn, and you guys can help each other with that. Lastly, you can also do some kind of so-called clinical or community research. This is kind of like epidemiological research where you're doing chart reviews, surveys, public health projects, things like that. These things tend to come through doctors, and this stuff is a little bit more rare. We don't even do a whole lot of this in medical school, if I'm being honest, but it does exist, and you should be aware of it. If you know a doctor who's doing some kind of clinical research, sweet. If you can get on that project, sweet. If not, don't worry about it too much. Most of the research you're going to do as an undergraduate student is probably going to be in the lab. Now, I want to talk about leadership experience, this ambiguous kind of esoteric thing that we call leadership and what it means and how to get it. I want to start off by saying that leadership leadership should not be construed with a title. I actually said this in a later slide, or I said it right here actually. It is not about the title. You do not need a title to be a leader. Being a leader is about finding an objective or a goal and organizing people and resources in order to get that thing done. So what does this really mean in reality? An excellent way, I think, to get leadership experience is through clubs and organizations at your school, because those clubs and organizations have a specific purpose, right? One of the things that I did when I was in college was I started a pre-medical club at my university when there was not one before. And the whole purpose of that club is kind of really what you're hearing now. It was to help pre-medical students get into medical school and for everybody kind of learn together about the things they needed to know to get into medical school. And so we would have weekly meetings where we would get together and do a PowerPoint and we would learn about all the things that you are learning about right now. And there was really no title associated with it, but ultimately it was just an opportunity for me to kind of just exercise my muscles in organizing and getting people together and planning and all those kind of things. And that's really what leadership is all about. It's not about being in charge. It's not about being in charge of anyone. It's really just about being a resource to people and using the skills that you have in order to do that. There's so many ways to get it. So many ways to get it. So again, it's not about the title. It's about the person you become along the way. It's about the skills that you exercise, the traits you acquire, and the traits you use along the way. Any opportunity to coordinate people in a creative environment is an outstanding leadership experience. What I do encourage people to do is, if you do join a club, if you do join an organization, something like that, Beta, the American Medical Student Association, you name it, try to shoot for this increase in progression of responsibility. Maybe you start out as a member. Maybe you get kind of plugged in and help out with some different things and you become an officer. I don't know, like the treasurer or the secretary. And then maybe you do that for a little while and you take on more responsibilities and eventually you become the president. This is kind of an example where the title is not important, but the title reflects a progression of responsibility where you exercised increasing responsibility to be a better contributor to the group, to the organization, to the club, whatever the case is. Now, I want to frame all of this within the lens of this thing right here, intentionality. Being a successful pre-medical student in terms of your extracurricular activities is not about doing anything, and it is not about doing everything. It is about finding those things that matter to you. Your goal is not to rack up hours. Your goal is to grow as a person, reflect on your experiences, and build a story that is true to who you are. Now, everything you do in college will become a part of your story. And that story is the story that you're going to share when you apply to medical school. How do you want your story to look? What do you want it to say about you? What do you want it to reveal about you? That is going to guide you in figuring out what experiences you want to have, what experiences you need to go out there and get. And my really, really high yield takeaway for you is medical schools are not looking for someone who's busy. They're not looking for someone who's a busybody, a busy bee, running around trying to do this and that and the third and the fourth and the fifth and just having their hands in all these things. I kind of said that earlier, but I want to reinforce it now. Medical schools are looking for someone who is becoming, somebody who is growing, somebody who is developing those good qualities and skills and traits that are going to lend to them being a good physician. And so I encourage you, be intentional with your time and the activities that you decide to participate in. That is going to make all the difference. With that, thanks guys. I'll see you in the next module.